one of the all-time greats, and a pleasure to have here on the Rich Eisen Show, Brent Musburger. How are you, Brent?
I'm fine, Rich. How are you? I certainly listened to you talk about a catch, and boy, do I agree with you. They've made it way too complex. And, I've always said, yeah, I can recognize a catch when I see one.
Sure.
And it's ridiculous what's happened with the catch rule in the NFL.
And the whole concept of a process, and that it's either a third step or it's a football act that nobody really can define as a football act. And now that we can parse it in high definition television, it just makes things completely confusing to me.
Exactly, and there's no reason for it. They should simplify it. And I totally agree with you. A catch in the field of play is the same as a catch in the end zone. And let's move on and be done with it. They should put you on the committee.
Thank you, Brent. So I have your vote. Do I have your vote, Brent?
Please put down yes from Brent. Okay, Brent, I'll do that.
Come on. Brent Musburger says yes. How can I be denied right now? There's so many things I want to talk with you about before we get to the here and now. I honestly, I think of you every single time I sit in my chair at the NFL Network. I pay homage to you on Thursday Night Football. I say you are looking live every time we see a stadium because of what you did with the NFL today. I don't think I'd be having a gig that I have every Sunday morning without what you did for CBS. Who was the first person to tell you, hey, let's have you host a show before any football games are played?
Yeah, sure. Let me tell you that story. Let me take you back. Bob Wessler was the general manager of the station, Rich, that I worked at in Chicago, WBBM, which was owned by CBS. Mm-hmm. And when he went to the network to be the head of the sports division, when he left our station, there was a countdown to kickoff, which was always taped, usually on Thursday or Friday. And so he thought, with the technology we've got, I think we can do this live. And so he brought me in. Unbeknownst to me, it was sort of an audition. They certainly didn't tell me this, but Jack Whitaker was out in the field, and they put me in for half times, not the pregame, because the pregame was still taped in '74. And the half times we did live, and we had all of the technology, the tape and everything. And, of course, like you, I was like a kid in a candy store with all the games around and the highlights, and so we did it. And then he came to me and said, I'd like to do a half-hour pregame show. Do you think you can do it live? And I said, sure, why not? As long as we've got the remotes that we can throw to the announcers. And about 2 weeks later, Rich, he called and he said, did you know Irv Cross at Northwestern? And I said, well, certainly. He was an outstanding athlete, and I ran into him on campus, and he's from Indiana, Gary, Indiana. I said, good friend of mine. Well, I shouldn't say good friend. He was an acquaintance of mine at school. And I said, absolutely, think the world of him, and he's been a coach and a player, and so I'm going to bring him in with you to work the high. I said, fine. So about 2 weeks later, he calls and he said, Brent, do you ever hear of a Mr. America called Phyllis George? I said, no, I'm sorry. I laughed. I said, Bob, I really don't follow it. I'm sure she's a lovely lady. I'm sure those winners are. He said, I'm thinking of putting her on the set with you and bringing her in, and what do you think? And I went, And then I said, why not? Figuring that he knew what he was doing so far. And so the three of us started that first year, and that's how it all began. And then the next summer he called in the middle of July and said, do you know a fellow by the name of Jimmy the Greek? And I said, absolutely. I know him well in Vegas. And we went from there. Rich, you'll get a kick out of this. We had a meeting with Pete Rozelle, who'd been a dear friend of mine from his days with the Los Angeles Rams. And then when I was a writer in Chicago, and then, of course, he ascended to the commissionership, replacing Burt Bell. Mm-hmm. And Pete was all in favor of the Greek. But he said, I really don't want you to use numbers as point spreads. Is there a way you could get around it?
Yes.
And I said, yeah, it wasn't my idea necessarily. It was probably the Greeks who suggested the check marks that we used. But one thing led to another. And I marvel at what you fellows are able to do because, in 30 minutes, we had a debate about who was going to get this minute or that. You guys go on for hour after hour, and you do a fabulous job with
Thanks,
it.
Brent.
I watch all the shows and like them and always get good information from everybody. And I remember back to the era which you referred to when it all began. And went from there.
Yeah, and when you mean the check marks, you mean the check marks next to the team that you had actually losing the game on the screen. That's what you're referring to with the check marks. Now,
And then the Greek list, he added the intangibles. That's when he could talk about controversies and everything like this. We had at the bottom of the board. So, and it was great. Phyllis left for a while and then came back. Shane Kennedy was there. Irv was with me all along, and did a terrific job. And I really enjoyed the beginning of the NFL today and the start of the live pregame show.
No doubt. No doubt. And Brent Musburger joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Where did you come up with your looking live? Where did that come from?
That's sort of interesting because our director, Bob Fishman, and we didn't use it our first year. It was our second year, but our director had said that a lot of people who wagered on the games out in Nevada had said to him that it's very important, especially late in the year, to know what the weather was like. So we threw out a couple of lines, and I said, we're looking live. I said, I can say you're looking live, and we could go from there. And so we tried it, and Rich, as I recall, the first week was only in one stadium. We did probably Soldier Field in Chicago in December. And then it worked so well, we just added it as they went from one stadium to the next. So we would open with 3 or 4 stadiums, all being the NFC ballparks that, of course, we control during the time. So it was usually New York, Chicago. The Rams were in Los Angeles at the time. The Dallas Cowboys were big. The NFC was completely dominant back in that era. So that's how. But it came about because Bob Fishman said that there were some gamblers who were interested in betting totals out in Las Vegas, and they'd like to know what the weather was, and that's how it began.
So you are just addressing a certain cross section of the viewing population, is what you were saying when you said
yes,
you're looking.
But
right?
We were able to, we kind of enhanced it as time went on.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just the stadium shot with the weather, we would actually throw in a star player or someone who was red hot or someone who was coming back from an injury. It evolved to become more than just weather. It became a story unto itself about a game. And there were even times when you were looking live at Cowboy Stadium on a beautiful October Sunday, and Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire, they're now live. And we would go to them before we would even shoot. So what we did is we just kind of wrapped everything around it. You go in a lot of directions with you are looking live.
Sure.
But I appreciate your references to it. And
Brent, come on.
It was, a lot of people have come to me and said, we'd be home from church and we look so forward to you were looking live at some stadium and some of the older people around now, and it's great fun to reminisce about it.
Now, Brent, there are some out there who think that as you are calling a game in 2015, you are still communicating to that certain member of the cross-section of the viewing public, Brent. There's a lot of people who are picking up what
Rich,
you're putting down,
I heard
Brent.
That. I hear that from time to time, and I don't know why anyone would think that as I sit here and look at Oklahoma 3.5 over Clemson and Alabama 10 over Michigan State. But you know what I mean.
Well, let's jump over that storyline and check under the hood of, let's say, the Heisman Trophy trio. Do you think somebody's missing this year, Brent, in the Downtown Athletic Club, or you like the trio that's being put out there for the Heisman in 2000?
I actually like the trio, to tell you the truth. I think that any of the three are deserving. I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, Derrick Henry will win it, judging from what he did last night, capturing the Walter Camp and the Maxwell and the Doak Walker. Those are usually forerunners. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that I voted for him in the mock polls all along till the last one, and I know that the Heisman people don't like me to say who I voted for or any of us, but I don't think they matter particularly in this instance. I voted for Christian McCaffrey after his unbelievable job against USC, and I didn't expect him. I don't expect him to win it, but I wanted him to get the trip to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So I figured a first-place vote wouldn't hurt him, and then Henry and Deshaun Watson, who's the other one, the fine Clemson quarterback, actually was the third player that I voted for. So, sometimes there are some people who could make that. Delvin Cook up at Florida State could have made the trip. But I always think it's a little bit easier for the announcers and everybody up in New York to handle it when it's just three. But again, I'll be shocked if Henry isn't the second Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama, joining Ingram, another running back of a few years ago. You've got now with the New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm. Brent Musburger joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk about the college football playoff. Who do you think prevails amongst the final quartet, Brent?
Well, I have thought Alabama all along, and I'm not going to change. I'm a little bit of a homer because I do so many games for the SEC network. In fact, the full schedule. So it's full disclosure on this. But I do think, Rich, that of all of the units now, and that would be secondaries, defensive lines, backfields, offensive lines that I have seen around the country, the number one group is the Crimson Tide's front seven. I just don't think anybody can do much business against that group right there. And Saban is an expert at defense, and he's got the great running back in Derrick Henry. And if the offense doesn't turn it over, as they did against Mississippi when they gave it up 5 times, I think Alabama will beat any of the three. I will tell you that some of my friends who follow it very closely, they have told me that they think Oklahoma might be the second best team in the country, and that Oklahoma has a very good chance to meet Alabama should they prevail against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, and should Alabama win the Cotton Bowl against Michigan State. But my choice right now would be Alabama.
Brent Musburger joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show, and you are going to see your Heisman Trophy votee, I guess, with the ways to put it, Christian McCaffrey, in the Rose Bowl that you'll be calling on January the 1st against Iowa. What a great matchup this is going to be. Just two contrasting styles, although Stanford can smash mouth at two. How do you see this one going into it, Brent?
Well, Stanford's got the experience in there, Rich. David Shaw, this is his third Rose Bowl in the last 4 years. I've covered the other ones. The one he lost, interestingly enough, was to Michigan State, and it was a very tense, tight game. I was there when he beat Russell Wilson and Wisconsin. So I'm going to give David a little bit of an edge in this. Enormous respect for Kirk Ferentz and what the Iowa Hawkeyes have accomplished this year, and they had an award that they won last night too as the best defensive back in the country. The Jim Thorpe Award went to Desmond King of the Hawkeyes, and he's intercepted 8 passes this year for them. So I'm sure they're coming in with a very motivated football game. And I noticed, Rich, at the aftermarket, the ticket sales for the Rose Bowl, $550, I think, is what I saw today, and that's far greater than either of the playoff games that are going to take place on the 31st. So obviously we're going to get a big contingent of Hawkeye fans who are going to invade Southern California, and the Rose Bowl is very special to me. It's always been the granddaddy of them all, and the great scene late on New Year's Day. And I agree with you. I think that this is a terrific matchup.
Last thing for you, Brent. What's the one event you haven't called that you know what, I'd love to give that one a whirl?
I would have loved to have done play-by-play of the National Hockey League. At this point, I don't want to worry about the pronunciations of all the fellows from Eastern Europe and those countries, the Czechs who are playing. But I always thought that there was great excitement, and I covered as a writer the Blackhawks, and I was close with Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita and that group in the Windy City. And Al Michaels has always told me, how much fun it is to call a hockey game. And so that Rich, would be the one thing that I missed. I've been around it a lot. I watch it a lot, but never was able to do play-by-play on it. So maybe in my next life, lad, I'll come back. By the way, how was your wife? A year ago at this time, I was interviewed by your wife.
I know, and I was jealous, Brent. But my wife told me, back off. There's enough Brent to go around for both of us. And here you are. She wanted me to say hello to you.
Make sure you wish her a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and everything. She was a delight to talk. She did a very good job, lad, in your absence last year.
No, I know that. She is by far and away the most popular host of this show, not named me, and perhaps even more popular than me. I don't, but and I thank you for coming on with her and here as well. She wanted me to say hello to you, and I please come back, Brent. This has been a blast.
I will. Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Good luck, Rich. You're doing a heck of a job. I expect you to be a tick faster in the combine in February now. Just pick it up a notch, lad.
Well, Brent, you are the wind beneath my wings there, and thank you for your vote to get me on the catch committee. I appreciate it.
Oh, you've got it. Okay, bye, Rich.
You bet. That's Brent Musburger, a legend.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.